Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, the last resort. Let's watch.
You're prepared to work through that? Is
Yes.
that what I heard?
Whether or not Liz and I move forward, I'm going to come out a better man. That I know. I hope we'll make it. I really do. But I know that I am leaving this village as a changed person with a lot to work on.
I can't evaluate the accuracy of that statement. We've only seen bits and pieces, but we've heard that before. And in terms of the edit, I don't see any evidence that he's changed or improved or healed any traumas or that he's self-aware. I don't know. You know, he's in therapy, I think. I hope. I know he's been in therapy, and God knows what he got into. The kinds of issues that I imagine that he is suffering from take years to recover from. And some of my clients that I have worked long-term with, and the clients have worked very successfully and very hard and very meaningfully in therapy and have changed profoundly. If you were in their life, in their personal life, after the first year of therapy, you might not have noticed a meaningful difference. They might have still been annoying to you in the similar ways that they were before. And yet, that first year of therapy was very productive. It just took a while for the changes in the therapy office to generalize to the person's outside behavior. So it's possible that Ed has made some very profound changes, and yet we just don't see the result, or they edit it in a certain way. I don't know. But we have heard him say things like this a lot, and given the fact that, you know, I can never know, but in terms of the edit, the fact that the last episode that I could predict fairly well what he would do, I mean, in general, says that change hasn't occurred. If someone's behavior is predictable, then there hasn't been a meaningful change, right? Might change occur in the future? Might some changes be happening behind the scenes? Maybe, but I suspect that this is wishful thinking on his part, or he's trying to impress the therapists, or he's trying not to get into a fight with Liz.
You know, I heard those words, wow, I kind of feel like I'm back at square one. I don't think you're back at square one. The awareness that both of you gained through the counseling process was enormous. So now you do have the tool.
I think it's a little presumptuous for the therapist. This is edited. I can never know what had all occurred. I can even tell there's like these little edits in the statements, but the therapist is saying, I think you've changed and grown. Meanwhile, Liz is saying in her head, no, we haven't. If anything, it's gotten worse, or I've realized that it's never going to change. So to say that is pretty alienating. And given Liz's body language, you would want to ask her, where are you at? And be open as a therapist in this setting to hearing from a client that the whole therapy thing for the resort did not help them. You know, it's very hard for us therapists to hear that because we work really hard, but we have to be open to hearing that from our clients. They deserve to be able to voice that. We need to know when things aren't improving. We need to validate clients, even when it's us that have failed our clients, or at least they think that they have. We have failed them. Now, maybe we didn't fail, it just took a while or something. I mean, that's what I would say in my head, is that the issues that Liz and Ed have are not going to be fixed in a format like this. If I have a sense of what's been happening here, I wish I knew. They don't refer to it, because in terms of the edit, I think they were there for 2 weeks. At least on camera, we saw a handful of kind of fun icebreaker and bonding exercises. And then we saw a class, like a sexuality class. And then we saw some individual sessions. We saw past life regression. We saw, did we see the two of them with a couple therapists? I think we did once. We saw that individual session with Angela, but that's all we saw. Now, I assume that every day. There have been multiple types of sessions, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's not necessarily the case. The show would have to pay for all that. The clients, the participants would have events happen in therapy that were not necessarily filmed, because that, again, costs a lot of money to have the therapist there and the crew there. So I think it's possible that we saw a majority of the actual events. We didn't see a majority of the event itself. The session probably was much longer, but we saw snippets. But I imagine that there's a good possibility that we saw all of the actual incidents of therapy, or at least most of them. Well, that doesn't seem likely. There's probably a smattering of other events. But it's possible that there's been minimal actual treatment. There's no sign of treatment. All of the major things. So it'd be weird if all of the major things that happened in these relationships happened, in the ones that were being filmed. So either they had a whole number of events throughout, because typically these kind of retreats, it's at least 6 hours, if not longer. You wake up in the morning and there's like exercises for a few hours, and then you have lunchtime, and then the afternoon there's more exercises and therapy, and then evening you would have some sort of fun event. That's what you do. And so typically for 2 weeks there would be a couple days in there where there wouldn't be any therapy, but it'd be pretty intense. And so what I would be thinking, if I were them, is I'd be thinking, well, we're on a TV show, everything's being filmed, I gave it my best shot given my limited role, and lo and behold, it didn't fix the entire problem. I mean, the reason why these people are on a reality TV show is because they have a lot of fighting. They fight a lot. They have a lot of issues. They get triggered a lot. They have behavior that is upsetting to a lot of people, including their partners and all the audience. That's why they're on the show. It's not likely that the way in which we're being paid and the model here is going to completely change all that. So I would be in fact, I would expect the model to fail, So I don't blame the therapist, not necessarily. But at the very least, if you're a therapist, you don't want to be saying the things that the therapist is saying, given that I don't think Liz agrees with that. You want to really... In fact, let's rewind it. For you therapists out there, this is a tip. Never declare that therapy has worked. The client declares that, and you just repeat it. You would never say, I think. I mean, there's an asterisk there that some clients occasionally will become demoralized by setbacks and will raise the idea that they think that nothing has changed and that therapy hasn't helped. And of course, I have to be very careful, because it would be very self-serving, not only just for my ego, but in a way to my pocketbook, because people are paying me. It'd be very self-serving of me to say, no, you've changed a lot. Look at all the... But it can help, because some people's traumas will result in them having a hard time recognizing their strengths and seeing how they have changed. And so sometimes I will throw it out there, but I would do so tentatively. Of course, I would say, well, from my perspective, this is what I'm seeing, but I don't know. I'm not in your shoes. I can't say that. And I might even literally say, but it's self-serving of me to say that, so I don't want to impose that on you. If you truly believe that you're the same as you were before, or that you have the same amount of problems, then I'm willing to accept that and maybe adjust things either in therapy or maybe another therapist. But here's what I see. So I will do that. But generally speaking, especially in a context like this, you would want to start off with like really asking both person and making sure that they feel free enough to be able to say, I believe that therapy has helped in this way, or I believe that therapy hasn't helped. And I'd be curious, also I would ask Ed, okay, you believe that you've grown, how? In what way? I'd be genuinely curious, but as a spectator of this show, I don't know what the word is, but I'm morbidly curious because I don't think there's a viable answer to that. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you're anything like me, your relationships are very important to you. And really, most of the reason why I make content, and perhaps a lot of the reason why you're here with me today, is to think about your relationships. And evidence shows that strong attachments contribute to all sorts of positive outcomes, like improved well-being or happiness, lowered anxiety, lowered depression, better relationships with your kids. Now, one type of relationship that we're often talking about here is romantic relationships or soulmates. I would say that a huge factor in the success of my relationship with my wife has to do with all the therapy that I've been through. Well, one place you can find a therapist to help with that is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
The awareness that both of you gained through the counseling process was enormous. So now you do have the tools.
And of course, Ed has that face that we've seen in contexts like this. He's just like, yeah, yeah. And in the first, 20 times I saw that face, I took it as him agreeing in I don't know what to say. It's like a dad way of agreeing or a wise way of agreeing or this is hard, I'm agreeing. This is, I get it. It's something like that. But after a certain point, seeing what was associated with that face, it looks as though it's a mode he goes into. I don't necessarily think it's conscious, by the way, but a mode that he goes into where he is optimistic and positive and pleasing and so some of you can think about this, that you are this way or you have someone in your life that is this way where they have a mode that they go into that deflects. They learned early in life or at some point that if they adopt a certain demeanor, a pattern, they will effectively get people to look the other way. And it doesn't necessarily mean avoiding everything, because if you avoid everything, that might cause people to pay more attention to you because they know you're avoiding. Whereas if you do what Ed does, where he says, he sprinkles in these little statements like, I have a lot of work to do. He threw that in. And then the acknowledgement of the weight of the situation. Yeah, I see that. And I'm optimistic, and I just know whatever happens, there's the way he sits, the way he talks, his tone of voice. If you didn't know him, you would, at least the first time I saw this presentation, I thought, okay, well, he seems like he's on top of it. And so there's not a lot of gravitational pull towards him. There's not a lot of alert of like, wait, it seems like, well, he's acknowledging it. He seems calm. He seems okay. He's not blaming anyone. He's not angry. He's not upset. And so I don't have to address that, so I can look the other way. I wonder if he adopted that a long time ago.
To be able to make choices with behaviors, with your thoughts. So we'll see if that can look different, maybe in time. If Ed does not make changes, I don't think Liz will be in this relationship for long. However, I think he does.
So no therapist should ever say something like that. That's not, in the beginning of my career, I would think things like that, and it would manifest perhaps in because that's, if it was a consultation, if the therapist was talking to another therapist behind closed doors, it's confidential, then yeah, you could say something like that. If a therapist said something like that to me, I don't know if I would say anything about it. If a supervisee said something like that to me, I would say, whoa, you don't want to get into the mindset of trying to predict whether or not someone's going to leave or stay, because take it from me, it's not a fruitful place to speculate. Because for us watching the show, we can relate actually, The first time we saw Liz run into this problem many moons ago, it was predicted, I think, by a lot of people, including me, oh, well, Liz is done. I mean, like that one phone call we heard that was leaked, I thought that was like in between seasons. I thought, oh, Liz must have broken up with him. I mean, why would she leak that? And yet, repeatedly, she is staying in the relationship. So honestly, if I were to predict, I wouldn't predict Liz will ever leave. I can't imagine what Ed could do that would cause her to leave. So I don't think that's true. And if you're talking to a therapist and it's consultation, yeah, you can have those kinds of willy-nilly conversations, but you're talking to the public, you're representing your field, the client will be able to hear you. To say that really puts a client in a bind. Now, maybe Liz won't be affected by that, but could be that Liz will hear that because she would watch the show and interpret that as, I should leave. But what about inside of her, she doesn't want to leave? Is that that's a conflict, right? And those kinds of statements, like say I'm working with a couple and I am meeting, let's say I'm meeting individually occasionally with each member, which I will do sometimes. And with let's just say it's someone like Liz and Ed. And so the Liz person, I say something like, they have a massive fight, bigger than this, because they've had bigger fights than this. And Liz is telling me about it, and I say something like, wow, it sounds like the right thing to do here is perhaps to think about yourself and maybe think about breaking up, something like that. I would never say that. Just even role-playing that actually is grating on my ears. But let's say I said something like that. Well, in all likelihood, they get back together. They're back in my office, right? And the Liz person probably eventually, or at least might tell the Ed person, by the way, when we were going through that really tough time, Kirk basically said that he thought I should leave you. Well, where does that leave me with the Ed client? Because no matter what I do, that's going to be rattling around in his head, especially if he has trust issues. But even if he doesn't, it can come across like I'm conspiring against Ed, or I don't like it, or I don't like the relationship. I don't think the relationship is valid or something. And there's a way to recover from that. But why say that is the point. You just ask the person and don't assume. We don't have any ability to be able to know what someone should and should not do. It's one of the cardinal rules of therapy. So to say such a thing, I don't know. It's not uncommon. Do I think Liz is going to be harmed by it? Probably not, but I can't help but to react when I see other therapists.
If Ed does not make changes, I don't think Liz will be in this relationship for long.
A much safer thing that she could have said is, unless Ed makes some serious changes, then the cycle of conflict will probably remain and their difficulties will probably persist. That's a much safer thing to say. I think I would put a lot of money on that being true. But what we don't know is what Liz would do about it. The choice to stay or leave is complicated. So I think what the therapist is trying to say is, unless Ed makes changes, then it's going to be hard for Liz to stay. It's going to be hard for Liz. The relationship is going to experience some difficulties. But we don't know what Liz. In fact, for us, like I was saying earlier, I don't know if that therapist watches this show, but for us, I think we could predict that Liz actually won't leave.
For long. However, I think he does respect her wishes for him to change. He was very engaged in the counseling process, did homework that I gave them. Was he perfect? No.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So we're hearing about homework. Well, how much? I wish I just knew. And of course, well, this show, it's almost like this show was purposefully vague about things. And I just wish that there was some indication, and maybe for the vast majority of the audience, they would not be interested in this. But I don't know. I wish there was just a website that we could find, because if there was wall-to-wall therapy, which would be typical for a retreat like this, then that would be very different than if there was just an occasional filmed session that was not really taken that seriously. So, but for the way she talks, it sounds like maybe they were in a lot of therapy. I don't know.
When we start seeing more of the progress than not, then we know change is happening.
The other thing is with homework, the typical kinds of things that will be assigned will be thinking about your communication or cognitive homework assignments like your automatic thoughts, this kind of thing. And we know from experience that Ed can absolutely participate in that and make it look like he is digging deep, but he isn't actually. And I've seen that before. And in order to actually help someone like Ed, there are some fundamental things that he, I think, needs to be aware of that I've seen no evidence that he is aware of. And then the corrective experiences and the change, the help, the trauma recovery, the schema shift would be significant as well. So just because someone participates in therapy, just because they do their homework, just because they appear to, they say the right things, they say like, yeah, I have problems. And we saw that one couple therapy session with them a couple seasons back. And, it was similar. He showed up, he was willing to hear criticism toward him, but we don't know what he was like when he went home, when he maybe had to reestablish dominance over Liz or something. I don't know that, but I guess I just care. I've been watching these couples for so long that I think, well, they're finally in therapy. And I mean, there's been other therapy too, but yeah, I don't know. I guess for any of y'all, whatever sort of competence or profession you have, and you watch a TV show or even just your neighbors doing something where you know that there's a path to success and they're not on that path, it's frustrating to you, right? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had that in another field, like you're a painter and you're watching someone paint, or you install windows and you're watching your neighbor, or I don't know, like, or you're an accountant, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're a website manager. I don't know, like, is there something, maybe you've even done that with me. You're some sort of professional and you look at me and you're like, I'm so frustrated that if Kirk just did X, Y, and Z, then everything would be better for him. And that's what it's like when I watch these couples. I just think like there's a pathway. I don't see any evidence that they're on it. And it's frustrating. I feel bad for them. It feels like unfinished. It's not completed. I want it to be completed. All right, well, let's adjourn there. Tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.